May I speak in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Good morning, congregation at St. Barnabas. It's a privilege to be virtually joining you this morning and sharing my sermon. I am just as nervous. I hate being filmed, and I'm reading off my laptop, so apologies for diverting that way. The thing that I'm finding most frightening about the lockdown is the time. Days are going very slowly, especially with a toddler, but the weeks are going past really quickly. It's hard to believe Easter was 2 weeks ago, and how different our journey through Eastertide looks when we're confined to our own homes. And today, the Gospel message takes us on another journey again, journeying along the road to Emmaus. How can we journey when we have nowhere to go? Today's passage leads us to potentially thinking it's straightforward, but rarely does a Gospel passage tell us what to do, think, or believe. No Gospel passage can ever give you a succinct or direct answer. It's part of the mystery that makes it so beautiful, but this in turn raises questions and invites reflection. It's a way of allowing intersections of Jesus' life and our life to overlap and intertwine. Within the Gospel narrative, we hear the telling of the journey that Cleopas and his companion took from Jerusalem to Emmaus and back again. It's unknown why Emmaus, and the journey wouldn't have been easy. 7 miles is a bit of a trek. And the story takes us back to Easter morning. But unlike ourselves, the disciples do not yet know that Jesus has risen and overcome death. It's Easter morning, and the 2 disciples are leaving Jerusalem. Who can blame them? Jerusalem has become a place of pain and sorrow and loss. It's a place of death and unmet expectations and disappointment. It's a place where their lives were shattered. No one wants to stay in that place. I sure wouldn't. Would you? And as they walk, they're talking about the things that happened, and I suspect all the things that didn't. Have you ever felt like you just had to get away? Ironic, under the current climate, or felt like life had given you more than you could handle? Have you ever wanted to run away from life? Been deeply disappointed, lived with unmet expectations, or just felt lost, as if your whole world had been turned upside down? Have you ever wrestled with the big questions, like who am I now, what's next, where do I go? And it gives you an insight into the feelings that Cleopas and his friend were having as they set out on their journey. Just like the best of us, they walk and they talk. It's an outward processing of what has happened, the disbelief and the pain, the anguish and the hurt. They're talking about a hope that didn't materialise, expectations that were unmet, feeling of being bereft and displaced. The faith that Jesus was the one, but he's dead. And there's a part of him that had been lost, a part of them that died with Jesus. As mentioned, it's not known why Emmaus exactly. Perhaps it felt safer than Jerusalem, or perhaps it was just one of the easiest places to escape to, and that need to wrestle with the disappointment. I like walking. It's one of my favourite things to do. Since we've been on lockdown, we live by a field and I try and get out on most days. The field's pretty empty, but when you take along a 2-year-old with an active imagination, it will soon put you straight. I've been on more bear hunts since lockdown than a David Attenborough special for BBC. But walking is definitely escape. I really like walking along coastlines or in thunderstorms. For some reason, I feel closer to God and I feel called to pray. Whilst walking for Cleopas and his companion may not have been as exciting as going on a bear hunt with a toddler, it was an escape nonetheless. How irksome then that a stranger would come and join. I am a massive introvert and my nature. It would simply cause my flight response to kick in. But even if you're not as socially awkward as me, it's still annoying when random people come and talk to you in public. I honestly don't think it was annoyance, though, that acted as the potential barrier in stopping Cleopas recognising Jesus. The disappointment and sorrow, however, may have been. Cleopas cannot believe the stranger who travels with them has not heard of the events of the past few days. However, as they travel, a bond forms between them, and they urge their companion to stay. When Jesus is at the table with them, he took the bread, he blessed it, and he broke it, and he gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognised him. They recognised him as the one they had left for dead in Jerusalem. They recognised him as the one who had accompanied them on the road to Emmaus. They recognised him as the one they would hope he would be. Were our hearts not burning within us while talking on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us? It's beautiful. And I'm hopeful that that's a feeling that you have encountered. Wherever it may have been, just knowing that Jesus is there, even if we didn't recognize it at the time. Hunger is another sensation that we're most likely familiar with, although if we're talking about a physical sense, 2 weeks of Easter eggs have left me quite full. Spiritually, however, we are often hungry, and this may currently be heightened in our inability to meet and partake in the breaking of bread. When they sat down to eat in Emmaus, Jesus wasn't just giving them bread. He was giving them the hope that had been lost, the faith that they needn't have questioned, and ultimately themselves. This was their restoration. Despite how it feels, moments in life where we break mean we are not at the end of our story. Jesus walks with us wherever we are going, even if we cannot visibly see him. As soon as Cleopas and his friend recognized Jesus, he vanished from their sight. Jesus isn't disappearing through ill consideration or thought, but his purpose had been fulfilled. Cleopas and his companion recognized him, and even though Jesus was no longer physically present, they carried him in their hearts all the way back to Jerusalem, in fact. The Jerusalem they had left was one of despair and death, but they returned from their journey to hear that Jesus was alive, seen and present in Jerusalem, back to the place where it all began. So let us go back to the beginning and revisit our question. How can we journey when we have nowhere to go? Our metaphorical and spiritual journeys from Jerusalem to Emmaus and back again happen frequently, and actually, it's a pattern. The psalm today gives direction about an unfaltering trust in God and remembering that God is with us. I love the Lord, for he heard my voice, and he heard me cry for mercy. Because he turned his ear to me, I will call on him as long as I live. In case you hadn't guessed, we're already journeying all the time. Our life is the road to Emmaus. It's constantly full of points where we meet and recognize Jesus. It's not always an easy one, and sometimes it's very painful. It means trusting that somehow, that when on our journey we are broken, that Jesus walks beside us and can take our brokenness through him and restore us. Amen.